Hello, Art 3, 4, and 5, 6. This is your part 1 of the value scale and sphere practice. So what you're going to need is your plastic ruler, the sphere image. So we're going to use this sphere image for this practice and our painting practices. So once we're done, don't get rid of this. So set that aside. You need one of the smaller pieces of black paper. You will need newspaper padding, and if your parent or guardian is a little concerned about the messiness, you could put a whole layer of newspaper covering your table, just one sheet. You're going to need the new set of supplies, so I'm going to leave the paintbrushes, pencil, big pink eraser in there, and pull out the little Ziploc baggie because this is all of your charcoal stuff. I'll set that one aside. And you're going to you have one new white pencil and one used from a long time ago, just in case. So it's kind of nice sometimes to have a smaller piece to for some mark making, etc. But just in case you misplace that one, you have a small one to use. Actually, let me just dump this out. You have a new kneaded eraser. So I like to keep my kneaded erasers separate, and I keep one for pencil, one for charcoal, one for white charcoal, and one for black, and then one for pastels. So this is your new kneaded eraser. Keep it just for the charcoal. Don't use your old one. Sometimes you get graphite on the paper from that. You have a little piece of sandpaper, which we'll talk about what you're going to use that for. You have 2 big blenders, 2 medium, 2 small. So one of each of these is for your 2 practices, and then one of each of these is for your final draft. So be careful with them. You have a chunk of white charcoal. You have your pencil top eraser to erase out fine details. But most of the erasing we're going to do is going to be with the kneaded eraser. And then, of course, you have your white charcoal pencils. All right, so let me set aside some of the stuff. I'm just going to use the medium blender. I'll actually leave out a medium and a large one just in case. And then the pencil top eraser we'll put back in the bag. We're not going to need that for this practice. For the next one, most definitely. Oh, also, you're going to need a coffee cup. Because we're going to trace it for the sphere. Okay, get yourselves all set up. If you need to pause and come back. So, in looking at this paper, this is Stonehenge black paper. It is not cheap. The reason you can tell it's not cheap is on one edge it has this kind of rippled edge. This is handmade paper, meaning it is not mass produced on machines. So it's a little bit more expensive, but it's a true black paper. So on one side it looks lighter. Don't use that side, but if you mess up, you're gonna have to use that side. And one side is a much deeper, darker black. We're gonna use the side that's deeper, darker. Okay, so we're going to start out with a value scale. So we are just gonna trace the ruler, and we're gonna go let's just go 8 inches wide. So I'm going to trace, and so with the white charcoal pencil, it's really important that you use extremely light pressure. So I'm holding it in the middle. If you can hold it at the end, that's even better. So white charcoal is really hard because of the way it's made, which we learned about on Friday or earlier. And so it doesn't erase as well. It's also less smudgy. So you need to really be careful about how hard you're pressing, and you're using a light pressure. So I'm going to hold more towards the end as much as I can. And I'm going to go all the way to 8. And then I'm going to do the bottom. All the way to 8. Okay, then I'm going to just do the sides and the other side. Okay, then I'm going to go back and divide. my inches. So I'll have an 8-box value scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So then, I mean, if you want to do the ones above, you can, but I'm just going to really lightly separate that out. Okay, so anytime we use a new media, I like to do a value scale. So whether it's with black charcoal, black and white charcoal, on like colored paper, pastel, etc. Just get you used to using something. We did it with pencil. So we kind of did it like with the mark making and stuff. So on one end, it's going to stay black. So I'm going to write black. It's going to stay the darkest value is going to be the black of the paper. And then we're going to build up our values to create a white value, and then we'll have a range of value in between with all of your midtones. Okay, so we'll start out with a pencil, but then we'll talk about like layering with this graphite stick, because if you have large light areas, you're going to use the chunk of charcoal. Sorry, it's not graphite, I apologize. The white charcoal stick, there we go. Okay, so I need to build up layers in order to make it look like a white value on top of black paper. So it's the same process as shading with graphite. I'm going to do a circular motion. And of course, craftsmanship counts, so turn your paper so your arm is comfortable. Oh, sorry, one other thing. This paper, since it's nice paper, it has a lot of tooth to it. Like it has like little, you know, at a microscopic level, it has like little like pieces of fibers that, you know, you can really like kind of work the charcoal into. But because of that, it absorbs your oils. So if you touch it or you wear lotion, it will show, especially if you're like really oily or you definitely put lotion on. So I'm going to put something underneath my hand. Looking for like a scratch piece of paper or an old worksheet that doesn't have a lot of graphite on it. And of course I just cleaned my area and I have like nothing. There we go. Okay, I found something. Okay, so I'm going to put a piece of paper underneath my hand because I do have lotion on. I don't want all the oils from my hand like soaking into the paper, because once it's there, there's nothing you can do. So turn your paper so your arm is comfortable for good craftsmanship. Okay, so that was the first layer. Then we're gonna build up the layers. So I kind of try to get it really smooth before I start to blend. And honestly, we are not really gonna blend this value scale. I want you guys to kind of practice with pressure only. But on your next, well, on the sphere, and on your next practice, you'll definitely want to get it as smooth as you can for areas that need to be smooth before blending. Okay, building up my layers. So I'm going in multiple directions, trying to fill in the gaps. I'm kind of pushing it into the paper a little bit. And the other thing I like about white charcoal is it's not as dusty as black charcoal, because it is a harder charcoal just the way it's processed and fired. But you do get some like fallout kind of happening. So the key is not to blow it like you can do. And you want to, because it's dusty, and you like your instinct is to like blow it and get it out of the way. But you're going to be really careful. Usually I'll put a piece of newspaper next to me and I'll just tap it. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to open this piece of newspaper. And if I need to, I can tap it onto the newspaper instead of blowing it everywhere. So some people are actually allergic to charcoal, or if you have really bad allergies, obviously any extra dust is not helpful. But also, you know, depending on your working space, like where are you working, and you don't want like white dust everywhere. And it smudges really, you know, kind of all over the place. Okay, so I feel like that's pretty good. It's pretty white. Okay, so for the next one, I'm going to do less layers. So you should have a definite difference in value, but it should be subtle. So start out with my circular motion, holding my pencil kind of in the middle so I'm not pressing too hard. Getting clean edges because craftsmanship always counts. Without outlining, I'm trying to get right up to the edge. Okay, so that's slightly lighter than the white. So then I'm going to lighten up my pressure, same thing. And I'm kind of moving my hand back, so move your hand back as comfortably as you can and still have control. Some of you are really good with pressure. Other people, you're still working on it, which is okay. Again, move your paper so your arm is comfortable. Mine's tilted to this side so that I can get like good clean edges. And I'm definitely pressing lighter for this one. For sure. Okay, trying to make it look smooth, fill in the gaps. Okay, so lighter. All right, so for the next one, I'm really gonna be a little bit more careful now because I still want it to look smooth, but now it has to be lighter than the one that it's next to. And so I'm holding my pencil way back towards the end so I can use more of the side of the charcoal stick inside the wood casing. And if you need to sharpen, you can. For this kind of layering, I wouldn't want a super sharp pencil because then it leaves lines. But you always need to use your red sharpener. This is actually designed for charcoal pencils. It's by Generals, which is the same brand that your charcoal pencil is. And so it's meant to sharpen softer wood and softer materials. And so then we just found like, hey, this works really good for Prismacolor and it works really good for, you know, shading pencils. And so we just kind of use that sharpener for everything. Okay, so there's a slight difference. I feel like I'm going to go back and add a little bit to this one. Plus, it doesn't look very smooth. It looks liney this way vertically. I'm going to go back, but I'm going to try not to make it much lighter, so barely any pressure. Adjust it. Okay, so I have 3 left. I'm going to hop to this very last one. That way I know like how I need to adjust my pressure for the last middle 2. So this last one before you hit black is as lightly as humanly possible. So I'm going to hold it as far back as I can. I'm going to do super light layers. Like I'm going to try to get it in one. So I'm trying to get like no overlap or as little overlap as possible. And really, that's it. That's as light as humanly possible for me. Oh, that does not look very good on the camera, but it looks smoother in person. Okay, so then I know I'm going to do this one. That way I can make an adjustment for that center. So same thing, I'm going to go as lightly as humanly possible because I'm going to try to probably get 2 layers on this one, but very very light pressure. And then I'm going to do a thin layer in the opposite direction. Try to smooth it out. Kind of fill in some gaps. Okay, so now I need it in between. So I'm still going to go very light pressure. Sketch that line in there. I'm losing the line. Okay, so I feel like these two look so similar that I'm going to do a thin, super thin layer on this middle one. I want like a value difference. Subtle, but still a difference. Okay, so that makes it look a little bit different. All right. So if you need to tap off excess kind of little particles or fallout, then you can. All right, this sphere image, you want to go about the same size. So it's roughly, let's see, how wide is it? Almost 7.5 by like 4 3/4. So 7 by 4 would be fine, or if you want to go 7.5 by 4 3/4. So I'm gonna go all the way to 7.5, and I'm gonna measure down 2 times 4 3/4. 4 3/4. 4 3/4. That way I have about the same size as the image. So I can make some proportion judgments. Okay. I'm looking at the fact that there's a little extra space at the top of that, but the sphere is pretty much in the center. Move it down slightly. Okay, so again, I'm looking at my spacing below here, which you can't really see, but I'm going to hold my charcoal pencil at the very end to try to just get the lightest transfer. Sorry, the lightest pressure transfer possible. Okay. So it does look lighter on this screen, but that's okay. All right, so looking at where that horizon line is, it looks like it's pretty much like in the middle. Okay, a little bit lower middle. A little bit low. All right, then we're gonna sketch in super lightly our value map. So looking at that upper, and I'm holding my pencil definitely, charcoal pencil, definitely at the end. And so remember, this is just a guideline for like where I need to be fading out. Okay, so I have the highlight, and then we have the core shadow. That kind of, and we're gonna fade it a little bit more. This did not copy, you know, the best that it could have. All right, so then cast shadow. So because there is darker areas around the shadowy parts, you want to make sure that you're not pressing very hard with the charcoal pencil, because part of your grade is not having white outlines everywhere. So just like part of your grade is, you know, usually not having dark outlines everywhere. Do a little bit of value mapping over here of the surface. Okay, a little bit here. Okay, in the background, like where does the darkness kind of fade into some darker midtones? Okay. All right, so it's all value mapped. Okay, so then I would want your image like either right next to you or right above. I'm going to go above, just so you guys can see, almost see both. All right, so setting this aside slightly, and then with one single sheet, hold on, let me grab one single sheet of newspaper. Oh, and we're not making a mess everywhere. Move that off to the side. Okay, so you have this piece of sandpaper. So this piece of sandpaper is like after you sharpen your charcoal pencil, especially if you're working in tiny little areas, you can kind of twist and you can kind of sand it like to a super fine point. I mean, your sharpeners do a pretty good job. It's also for this charcoal stick. So this charcoal stick has some adhesive on the outside, like it's the casing on it, so that it doesn't get powder everywhere, so that it doesn't break and transfer, etc. And so we're gonna take some of that off. And for your next practice, we're definitely gonna take a bunch of it off. So this is also what it's for. So if you need more sandpaper, and you have sandpaper at home, like a fine grit, like a 300 level, is pretty much what this is. It just comes in like little strips. So I'm gonna try to save some of that for my actual pencil. But I'm gonna take off that casing, especially more on the, towards the top or the tip that I'm gonna use. Okay, so notice how it's like all powdery. Put that in the garbage or tap. I'm gonna fold, put that off to the side. So keep this piece, put it back in the Ziploc bag. Okay, newspaper padding. So in the areas that are super, super light, we're gonna save the pencil a little bit and use this chunk or this stick. So we're gonna add in some values, and this will be the end of part 1, and then we'll come back tomorrow for part 2 and blend. So I'm just gonna add in circular motion, circular motion. And then I am going to lighten my pressure. And I'm using more of the side of it. Not the whole side, but like the side of the tip. So circular motion. Kind of fade out, then I'm gonna build up another layer in there. Okay, we'll come back to the surface. So with your charcoal pencil, and then I need something under my hand. I'm not smudging what I just drew. I'm gonna go back and kind of work my charcoal pencil into those little gap areas, like you can really see the texture of the paper, you know, the tooth of the paper. All right, so I am looking at how we do have a clean edge, so I'm gonna outline, but I'm not gonna press very hard because it's not super white. And then it kind of fades out. Okay. So I'll match that line and bring it into the highlight. And remember, you can always add more, but it's really difficult to take away white charcoal. Looking at how like the top of the sphere is lighter, fading over. I'm trying to keep those curved kind of values to make it have a, you know, some form. Okay, so I'm gonna fade out before I think I need to, because then at this point, your blender is gonna do some of the work for you, for your darker midtones. Okay, but I do see the reflected light area at the bottom, so a really thin layer I'm going to add, and that kind of merges in over here. And I'm gonna make it smaller than I need, knowing that I'm gonna use my blender to kind of move it a little bit. Okay, and then a tiny bit of reflected light on that side. I think that's where we're gonna end today. Just make sure you're faded out and you're ready to start blending and building up some layers. All right. Tomorrow will be part 2, but feel free to work ahead because both videos are there. Okay, good luck. Hopefully it looks good.